Welcome to I Don't Know What to Name This Show. I am your host, Sean Arguello. Whenever I think about James Cameron, I see him in three ways. One, the director of some of the greatest movies ever made, which include The Terminator, Aliens, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Two, I think that James Cameron is best film that he's ever made. Next to those is Titanic. Although, to be completely honest, Titanic is kind of a forgettable love story that took place on an iconic tragedy, and that's the reason why people would remember it. And the actual reason why I would remember James Cameron is him sort of flaunting his massive ego because he directed those movies. What am I talking about? Well, that's the movie that we are talking about today, Avatar. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I first heard about this movie, you can make fun of me if you want to. I honestly thought this was connected to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Okay, I'm not... Please forgive me. I can already see the dislikes coming. But let me explain. The show was called Avatar: The Last Airbender. This movie is called Avatar. For some reason, I thought this movie was connected to that TV show. But that TV show ended up getting its own live-action film, which I'm not going to talk about because, well, to be completely honest, I never really watched the show, and I could not do that review justice. I couldn't defend the show because like I said, I've never seen it, but watch any other review of that movie, and you'll see how people are just upset with how it kind of disrespected the source material and all this other stuff, and just overall bad direction. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Avatar is not a good movie. Let me just put it out there. I mean, I know some people would say that, how can you not like this movie? It's a great story. No, it's not a great story. It's a very common story that we've seen in many other movies before, aided by some visual effects that mostly aged well, but in other ways do not look good. Hear me out. Hear me out. Now, this review, I'm not going to go scene by scene for this film because, quite frankly, this is 2 hours and 42 minutes, and I would be here literally all day, and I know that your time is important. Well, mine isn't important because I'm doing this, but hey, that is what it is. But as of right now, I want to talk about this film as a technical standpoint, and other than the visual effects that people keep coming back to this movie, I guess, I want to talk about just pretty much why this film isn't good other than the visual effects, but at least let me get the positives out of the way by looking at Avatar. When I watch this movie, I don't know if anyone else sees this, but I want a documentary on the planet Pandora. Now, you are probably familiar with the show Planet Earth, where it was David Attenborough talking about the planet Earth and all the different living creatures that live on the planet. It's basically a nature documentary, and it shows off the beauty of the world and every single creature that lives on it. Well, except for humans, but honestly, I wish that we would get a documentary about Pandora, because I want to know more about all of the creatures and all the insects and everything that live on this planet. I want to see that. I'm interested in that. In my opinion, that's what this movie should have been. That's a complete lie. I just scrap everything I just said. But keep the nature documentary as kind of like a main focus. Because when I first saw this film, I was pretty much blown away with how far 3D technology has come since then. But honestly, looking at this, it's a technical achievement, and seeing everything that went into not only making this film, but seeing that the budget of this film was actually, I'm on the Wikipedia page, $237 million. I can see that the money is definitely on screen. It's one of those films that needs to be experienced not only on the big screen, but with like a, yeah, sure, you don't need to have like 3D glasses or like a 3D TV to enjoy this. But honestly, this is what 3D is pretty much made for. To basically get transported into another world where you feel like you're flying inside of this world, basically. And seeing these environments and all of these giant vehicles in the world, that's truly something that I want to be a part of. I want to be part of that world, minus all the space travel, and of course this movie taking place in the 22nd century. But honestly, those are the things that I expect to see when I see a 3D film. But overall, most motion pictures don't take advantage of 3D like how Avatar took advantage of the 3D gimmick. Other films with 3D either sort of like shove the action in your face by pointing an object directly at the camera, so it's very annoying. It's basically giving off the fact like, oh, look, this movie's in 3D. Here, look at this. This is 3D. It's like it's literally jumping out at you. I don't need those gimmicky 3D, gimmicks. I want to see something, like I said, that makes it feel like you're flying through the world. How to Train Your Dragon was fantastic for its use of 3D because it really feels like you're flying along with the dragons in that wonderful world of Burke, I think is what it's called. I'm sorry, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Avatar makes me feel the same way. I can see all of the creatures that live there, and it really feels like I'm able to pretty much reach out and touch them, as well as just seeing all of the environments of when you see something actually seem big in this film, you can actually sort of like feel the ground that they're walking on. You can practically reach out and touch it. Now, I'm sure that Avatar, The Way of the Water, does this even further. It goes even further in every way, but I have not seen Avatar, The Way of the Water, the second Avatar. I don't plan on seeing it. Well, I'm not going to spend money to see that movie. Maybe I could use some free movie tickets that I have. No, I'm not going to see that movie. I will wait for it to come out on Xfinity Stream. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. That's the thing I wish that this movie really focused on. Really the world building. Seeing everything that goes into Pandora. Not just showing off, oh, look, here's a little section of Pandora. You have all these floating islands. Okay, that's something that we may have seen in other movies and other TV shows before. But overall, that's the problem. That's the problem with this movie. Everything is just something we've seen before, done in a different way. Let me explain. The main character of this film is named Jake Sully, and he's played by Sam Worthington. And this is one of the biggest problems of this entire motion picture experience. Sam Worthington is not a leading actor. I can see him in a supporting role, but if you're sort of trusting him to lead a movie, let's just say you've got another thing coming. Now, give credit where credit is due. I actually like Sam Worthington. There are other roles that he's made, where he's been in, where he's actually much better than he is in this film. As a matter of fact, in the movie Terminator Salvation, which came out the same year in 2009, it's not a good movie. We're all in agreement. The only good Terminator movies are the first two. And honestly, that's where the franchise should have ended. But at least in there, he seems to be interesting enough to make me want to know more about his character, and they give him a pretty cool plot twist. I'm not going to spoil that because I'm talking about Avatar right now, but do check it out. It is kind of a decent plot twist that almost saves that film. Here in this film, he just seems boring. He's kind of flat with his performance, and this is the guy that we're supposed to be stuck with throughout the entire running time. I made a big deal about characters in my Cat in the Hat review, which if you haven't seen, check it out because I destroy that movie. But let me transition back into here. I explained that characters are the most important part of a movie. If I care about the characters, I'm going to be emotionally involved in what they're doing at any given moment. Automatically, if you're setting up this guy as your main character, okay, he's a disabled former Marine. Okay, already off to a great start. He's someone who I can look up to. He's someone who's going to be strong and powerful. And okay, here's his performance. Oh my God. Now, I could not do better because I'm not an actor. I'm not, that's not something I do for a living. But what the hell is this guy doing? You are supposed to be the person that we need to follow. And if you're the main character and we're watching you throughout this entire film and you give that performance, oh boy, we're probably like 2 minutes into this movie and I'm already sick of this guy. Yeah, not off to a good start, but hey, let's move on. Let's move on to an actor who everyone can get behind, Sigourney Weaver. Now, if you ask me, I'm just going to say it right now, Sigourney Weaver is the only saving grace of this movie. I'm being serious. Her character's name is Grace. Great job, James Cameron, on writing a... You know what? I'll get into that later. Okay, so Sigourney Weaver is a badass. As Ripley in Alien, she is definitely someone who you can get behind. That is how you write a strong female character. Badass lines, pretty much kick-ass, and honestly, that's all I need to go from there. Sigourney Weaver is awesome. I could literally go off all day of how much I could praise her, but for now, let's stick with this movie. Oh boy. So, before I get into the problems of this movie, I'm going to try to get back into the good things. Some of the good things, like I said, well, aside from Pandora itself, a lot of the creatures and the designs of them are actually very, very well done. I cannot give enough praise to where the visual effects team really stands out right here. Because seeing all these different animals, you have like these flying dragons, you have these giant beasts and everything. They got really creative with the designs. And even like these sort of flying monkeys is what they look like to me. I actually want to know more about them as opposed to these forgettable characters, but again, more on them later. But these creatures, seeing everything, these flying, they sort of look like giant dragons or like flying, I don't want to say birds, but that's really like the only way I can describe them. But those are the things I want to see in more of a natural habitat. I know I already mentioned like the Planet Earth documentary, but if they created a Planet Earth documentary about Pandora, I would be so interested in wanting to learn more about that. I want to see these creatures flying around in their natural habitat. I want to see what they eat, aside from just being these hostile creatures that get taken out by the Na'vi, or the aliens, which, okay. Well, I'll get back into the positive things in a little bit, but I need to talk about the blue creatures known as the Na'vi, or is it Na'vi? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but let me talk about these things. When I look at them, I honestly see unfinished CGI. Let me explain. Now, I know it might have been impressive at the time, and to be fair, it still is impressive. They have to go through motion capture to capture all of their facial expressions and emotions and be able to bring those to life. But there's one major problem I have with these things. Well, really two things. One, they look stupid. I'm just going to get it out there. These are some of the most just, well, not bland, but these are honestly kind of the dumbest looking aliens I have ever seen put to film. And there have been some dumbass ones that I've ever seen, that I've seen in other movies. nothing about them really stands out aside from the fact that they have tails, fangs, and hair extensions that connect to other things. But oh boy, I am going to get to that because that's a whole nother thing that I will talk about. But let me explain something. When I watch this film, these characters, or like these creatures, I know how earlier I said the money is on screen and you can see all $237 million on screen. Honestly, I wish they fixed the design of the Na'vi. Honestly, it looks unfinished. It looks like in a video game. You know how when you play an old video game, the graphics obviously aren't as good, but some of the things look unfinished? That's what I see when I look at these. I don't see extensive CGI put into... Well, how do I put it? It looks like there's another layer that they forgot to put on. You know how underneath your skin, when you look at something, it's just the muscle and like the blood and everything? It seems like they're missing the skin of them. They're missing a final layer to make it look, well, honestly, better than the final design. And there are honestly quite a few moments in this movie that, I'm just going to say it right now, the CGI looks awful. No, you need to look. You can't really look at me because I'm not recording my face. They look awful. Now, obviously, I could not do a better job because I've never worked in CGI before, but oh my God. This movie cost $250 million, and shots like this exist where it looks like it's from a sci-fi original movie. I can think of many moments where, oh my God, you close your eyes. If you pause it on a scene, you close your eyes and open them back up. Obviously, some parts will look amazing. They'll age really well. But then on other frames, oh my goodness. What? How do you get away with thinking that this is complete CGI? And how did you sneak all of those drugs into the studio? Because I am curious. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to praise this film for all of its... Well, obviously it has problems. Every film ever has problems. But I've been trying to praise this film for its technical achievements and... Just what the hell? How does this film, at some points, look worse than a movie that came out in 1993? You can probably think of which movie I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jurassic Park. Now, Jurassic Park used a ton of practical effects for a lot of the scenes involving the dinosaurs, but in the scenes where they had to use CGI, it looks eons better than some of the stuff in Avatar. Now, I'm sure they fixed it in Avatar 2, but in this specific film, I am not seeing that. I am seeing unfinished characters, and I'm not just talking about the visuals on them, how they look incomplete. I'm talking about the characters and how they've been written. Now, let me just explain. This film also features some sort of like questionable lines. That's really like the only way I can put it. Just questionable movie lines. Something I've already heard before a million times. As a matter of fact, one of the opening lines of the main villain of the movie, I'm sure he has a name, but for right now, I'm just going to call him Colonel. He literally says, "You're not in Kansas anymore." Okay. That line worked when it was first introduced in The Wizard of Oz. It's not going to work in this film because it's becoming a cliche. Now, there are ways to do cliches the right way and ways to do cliches the wrong way. This is a film that is full of cliches, and oh my god, they do it in the worst possible way. What am I talking about? 20 minutes later, I'm finally getting into the story. Now, the story is basically a cut and paste of many stories that you've seen before from many other movies. This film just takes those stories, transfers them into a new file, basically in like a PowerPoint, and creates pretty visuals to distract you from the fact that the story isn't that good. Let me explain. I'm trying to remember this film, but honestly, oh boy. Okay, let me try to compose myself before I kind of go off on the story and just the dumb decisions that go into this, as well as just a bunch of other cliches that I've seen in many other motion pictures. Okay, let me start right now. So the story takes place in the 22nd century. Yeah, in the 22nd century, in the year 2154. So, like I said, I'm not going to go scene by scene because otherwise I'd probably be here for 4 hours dissecting every single detail of the scene. So, as of right now, let me just explain. The main character, Jake Sully, I'm just going to call him Jake because I'm not going to say Jake Sully all the time. So Jake, he is put into one of the Na'vi because the person who was supposed to be a part of the Avatar program was his twin brother, but he ended up dying, and apparently he was the only person with similar DNA, so he matched perfectly. And this is a major problem. That would not work in real life. Because his brother, I'm sure he has a name, but I'm just going to call him his brother. I'm pretty sure that he trained extensively for this mission for years and years. And now they're going to have Jake take over just because he has similar blood and like similar DNA to the guy who originally trained his ass off pretty much for. And he's just going to immediately get it all in one try. It's just going to be super easy and barely an inconvenience for him. He's not going to go through any like trials and errors, whereas his brother probably went through many, many different trials and errors of messing up. He didn't have a successful connection, or like when they transferred his mind into the Avatar, he's not going to get everything right the first time. Jake just comes in and just basically I'll think of the expression later, but it's pretty much smooth sailing, no problems whatsoever. It's just like a simple glide in an airplane. You're not pressing on the gas, you're just simply just going off of the wind currents. You're just cruising. You know what, I'll just stick with cruising. You didn't have any problems. You just immediately connect to this avatar and you're automatically just pretty much like perfect with it. You're like able to, well, I'm kind of losing my train of thought, but you're just able to have pretty much no problems with it whatsoever. Okay, well, not off to a good start, but hey, maybe we can continue with the rest of the story. So, basically, the reason why they're on this planet of Pandora is because they're trying to mine this mineral called unobtainium. Okay. If you, oh boy, how do I describe it? That is the actual name of the mineral that they used in this movie. Okay, I'm only going to spend a little bit of time on this, but we need to address this. That had to have been a placeholder for something else that was way more interesting, pretty much. Why would you stick with the name unobtainium? Now, if you're writing the first draft of this script and you have that as the name, okay, it's a good placeholder, but you're going to come up with a a more creative name, and that's just a stupid name, and you're obviously going to come up with something that's, a little bit more unique and, like I said, creative than that. Nope, we're just going to slap that onto the script, and we're just going to send it out so they can read the script. Yay, $10 million for us, or however much money the scriptwriters got paid for this. Actually, who wrote this movie? Oh, it was written by James Cameron. Okay, let's just continue. Anyways, long story short, Jake is saved by this one actual Na'vi named Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana. Also, I just need to mention this. Zoe Saldana, if you want to make a successful movie, cast her, because she's a part of Avatar and Avengers Endgame, the two highest grossing movies of all time. Except that she's blue in this movie, and she's green in Avengers, because she plays Gamora, who is part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I just think that's kind of funny. So if you want to be successful, just cast Zoe Saldana, and you should be good to go. So anyway, continuing. So he is invited to her tribe, and okay, this is where the cliches really start to kick in. Apparently he might be considered as... Okay, let me pause this for right now. If you are ready to have your mind just do a complete 180 on you and go from enjoying this movie to just questioning everything about this movie, it's right here. I think that they probably believe him to be the chosen one. Now, if you just let out a giant ugh or like some massive groan, you are not alone. That rhyme was unintentional, but I'm just going to roll with it. This is a problem I have with movies. When you introduce this character as the chosen one who's going to help you out, let me just explain this by saying... this never works out. I'm just going to put it out there. The chosen one is never the chosen one. It's always someone else. It's always going to end in disaster. Movies don't know how to do the chosen one. Well, at least well. There might be some movies that do that well, but this is not one of them. Let me think of another film that does the chosen one angle and it doesn't do it the right way. I'm gonna get so much hate for this. Star Wars. Now, before you start typing a comment in the comment section of the YouTube video or start sending me threats or like leaving a dislike on this video, let me explain. I really enjoy Star Wars. I like watching Star Wars. I can watch those movies all the time and pretty much never get sick of them. I really enjoy going into the world of Star Wars. I want to fly alongside the ships. I want to travel to all the different planets. Hell, even having a lightsaber would be badass. Star Wars is honestly, you know what? I'm not gonna say that right now, but let me just say that's a story for another time. Star Wars does the chosen one thing kind of poorly. Let me explain. It basically stands out in the prequels, which I'm pretty sure everyone is in agreement. Those movies suck. I'm just gonna say it. The prequels, I'm pretty sure most people will agree with me. The acting is atrocious. The dialogue is bad. And also, a lot of the visual effects just look so awful. Oh, boy. But, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll talk about Star Wars some other time. They do the chosen one with Anakin Skywalker. But, I'm not going to go further than this, but the way that the prequels handled it was just poor. That's really the only way I can say it. But let me get back into this movie. Going back to the cliches, you might have heard of this one cliche known as the liar revealed. That's basically a cliche where the character isn't who you think he is. He knew about this massive plan this entire time, and all of the people are suffering because of it. I hate this damn cliche. This is, in my opinion, probably the worst cliche in film. Because there are so many films that do that. And oh my god, it sucks. Shark Tale. This. You have the third... Basically, it leads to a third act breakup. What that means is that character is kicked out. He goes his separate ways. He then comes to terms with trying to help the people who he ended up hurting. And he somehow has to come back and win the battle and... in order to gain their trust back. Oh my god, I freaking hate this cliche. This movie does it. In The Lion King, it happens because Simba tells Nala basically to leave him alone. He doesn't have any responsibilities. They go their separate ways. He goes on this journey. He goes on to talk about something. He meets up with his father, and then he decides to come back and help out his pride. I just said a lot of words in a very short amount of time. Anyways, that happens. I'm pretty sure it happens in some superhero movies where they make one major mistake, they go off on their separate ways. This happened in... I'm going to try to throw this back a little bit. It happened in Evan Almighty. His family left him, leaving him alone. They come back, and then they help him. They have a reunion. They apologize, and blah, blah, blah. It's like nothing ever happened. I could honestly go all day about this terrible, terrible cliche, but, oh boy. I'm gonna just leave it as is, and honestly, that's all I'm willing to go, because, honestly, just talking about the plot of this film is kind of hurting me, because to be completely honest, this is nothing more than just cliches wrapped up in a $237 million CGI mess. Now, to be fair, it is nice-looking CGI for the most part. But coming back to this film, Sigourney Weaver's character, Grace, she dies. So, okay, there goes the best character in this entire movie. And the only person who I really even cared about... And so now, one last positive thing I completely failed to mention were the action scenes. Honestly, when I look at the battle scenes, they're actually really, really well done. Especially that final battle where you have all the Na'vi on these, these like blue dragon bird winged creatures. And they fight off all the armies with pretty good weaponry and stuff. It is visually pleasing. Sure, it's just a CGI nightmare. I mean, it's so busy. I mean, you can't even follow what's going on half of the time. But overall, I'll give credit where credit is due. It's a pretty well done. It's directed well. It uses some really good camera angles. The cinematography is gorgeous. And I think the biggest praise I can give those battle scenes is that none of the characters really talk, so I don't get to hear their crappy dialogue come out of their mouths. So I will applaud you, Avatar. You managed to make some really kick-ass action sequences. Too bad I wish the rest of the movie was like that. Let's see. Oh yeah, so, anyway, the Colonel gets, the upper hand, basically almost kills Jake. Neytiri kills the Colonel, and he dies, and ultimately Jake's soul is transferred into the Avatar, and that's how the movie ends. Well, how do I put this? I basically gave you the Spark Notes or Cliff Notes version of this. I missed out on a lot of details and everything about this film, but as of right now, I'm just going to roll with what I have right now. And let me just put it this way. Because you sat through me talking about 35 minutes of this movie, or like this entire movie wrapped up in 35 minutes, I think everyone is intrigued for another epic Shawnee rant. Okay, now with all that being said, let me begin. This is not a good movie. I'm pretty sure I've already expressed that, but I missed out on a lot of things, but just giving you the basic major plot points in hearing this, I never saw this film as anything other than just a visual masterpiece at the time, and even that isn't 100% correct all of the time. Because like I said, Pandora is beautiful, most of the creatures are amazing, and I want to learn more about basically Pandora in general. I've said it many times before, but I'll say it again because I really wish that they could put it on Disney Plus, because I'm pretty sure that, I'm pretty sure Fox is owned by, was this even created by Fox? Yeah, it was 20th Century Fox, so 21st Century Studios. Fox is owned by Disney Plus. If they came out with a show about Pandora, like a Planet Earth documentary, I would rewatch that over and over and over again, because I am interested in learning more about Pandora. I want them to literally build the world. I know that in Avatar 2, they are building up on the world in many ways by introducing a bunch of water and all these different whales and types of fish. So that I applaud them for. The thing I don't applaud them for is the plot of this film, the characters involved, and why they would kill their best character when there's like 50 minutes left of this movie. I'm probably exaggerating that number, but that's what this movie feels like. It feels like it's a drag to get through. Remember how earlier I was complaining about Sam Worthington's performance? Honestly, I've seen more correction. Let me retry that. I've seen more emotion from, honestly, inanimate objects. If you remember me in my Cat in the Hat video, or in the Prince of Egypt, I talked about a technique called show, don't tell, where that is visual storytelling. No one is talking, you're just reading the emotions on screen. Let me tell you the opposite of that. Tell, don't show. You may have heard of this thing called exposition. Exposition is a technique when characters are explaining something to other characters and us, the audience, rather than showing us what's happening. They're telling us what's happening. Now, for example, if you watch a war movie and instead of them showing you the battles being fought and people dying, instead they just talk about it rather than showing you it, that's exposition. They're explaining to you what's happening. This film has the worst exposition I have ever seen put to screen. Let me explain. Jake is talking to a laptop, recording himself and everything that's happening. So let me explain. It shows the audience what's happening. Then he would go to a laptop and talk about it. He literally talks to the audience and is talking and telling them what he's doing. That breaks the fourth wall, but it takes us out of the suspension of disbelief. I probably never talked about this before, but let me explain. The suspension of disbelief is an idea that when you're transported into a movie, you basically forget all like logic and basically, how do I explain it? It seems like something would never happen in reality. For example, the movie Home Alone is the biggest example of the suspension of disbelief because of all the stuff that had to be set up in order for Kevin to be left at home. He has to sleep through not only a ton of his family members waking up and making so much noise because they slept in. He has to have never heard of airport transportation. And also, he never has to think, oh, geez, maybe they went on vacation that they've been planning up for however long. The suspension of disbelief takes place there because when you're invested in something, you kind of forget about logic. Like, okay, realistically, Kevin would wake up over all of these family members moving around and screaming. But the suspension of disbelief takes into play because, oh, we just need to have this character set up, and this is set up as being by himself. We need to get to him being by himself, but this is the only way we can think of how to do it. Realistically, it doesn't make sense as to why that would happen in real life, but you just need to have your brain be turned off for just, let's say, an hour and a half to watch a movie. You're basically drawn in. Why am I talking about this? Because in the suspension of disbelief in Avatar, realistically, you would not be putting this out there of you talking to your laptop explaining what's happening. You're not supposed to give okay, I'm drawing a blank on the word, but I'll come back. Exposition. That's what it was. You're not supposed to be talking to the audience and telling them what's happening. I mean, I understand if you're recording those for the military to understand it and all the program, the Avatar program is what it is. And obviously, I understand why you would be talking to them like that in the film, but we don't need to see it as an audience. We don't need to see you talking to us, explaining what you just did when we literally saw you do what you just did. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot to mention this. Jake's mind, at the beginning of this movie, his mind is transferred into this avatar, and then every now and then they would take him out of the avatar, and that way he would be able to talk to the military and the avatar program about what he's learning and the location of this mineral unobtainium. But I felt like I should have mentioned that earlier, but hey, better late than never anyways. This film just you know what, I'm just gonna, as much as I want to rant about this film, I'm just going to try to wrap this up in the best way. Like I said, this is a forgettable story, forgettable characters, and really the only reason why people remember this movie is because of the visual effects. If you take out the visual effects, you're not going to remember this movie in probably like a day. That's really like the biggest takeaway from this. Another thing, I forgot to mention this earlier. This is the same way for Titanic. Titanic is a very basic love story that takes place in one of the greatest tragedies that human history has ever seen. It's a forgettable love story. You're not going to remember it after you leave the theater, because it takes place at the time of this ship sinking. If you put this in literally any other movie, you would not remember it for just being another dumb love story. How do I know this? Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is a 2001 film directed by Michael Bay, and it is basically Titanic the wrong way. It is a love story that takes place during one of the biggest tragedies ever. And do you remember that love story? No, you don't. No one remembers that love story. Because it's a forgettable love story that takes place on a tragic moment in human history on Pearl Harbor. But the reason why we remember the thing for Titanic is because those characters sort of left an impact on us, and oh my god, that dumbass ending. But I'm not going to talk about that right now. Okay, I'll talk about it. Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet could have fit on that door frame. Mythbusters even confirmed this. Okay, Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I don't remember the characters from Pearl Harbor other than it's a movie that took place at Pearl Harbor time, and it was a visually pleasing action sequences, but other than that, it's a forgettable love story with stupid characters, and that's pretty much the only way I could put it. That's sort of what Avatar is. Avatar is a cliche of sort of like a forbidden love between two different species. They get closer together, they break up, then they come back together in a time of need, and all of that is just wrapped up into a visual spectacle. And honestly, aside from the effects, like I've said, no one's going to remember the plot. No one's going to remember the story because they appeal to a general audience. Most people do not watch a movie because of the characters. Most people watch movies because of visual action or something else that just draws them in. How do I know this? Transformers. I will talk about that movie in the next episode, but as of right now, Avatar is a forgettable film with basic cliches, uninteresting characters, uninspired ideas, and the only ideas that seem inspired have been pretty much dormant until Avatar: The Way of the Water. But like I said, if they ever make a Planet Earth documentary on Pandora, I will rewatch that again and again. But as of right now, the only bit of Pandora we have is from the movies and the Disney theme parks. And honestly, the animatronics that they put in the theme parks, fantastic. I cannot give enough praise for those. But for this movie and what it is, it would honestly be better off if this was just a one-off film. And I honestly still to this day do not know why this is the highest grossing movie of all time. $2.923 billion. It's a basic story aided by visual effects, which most of the time look good, but every now and then you'll get those scenes with those shots in this movie that make you question where is the money. And honestly, that's really the only takeaway. The money is clearly on screen, but there are some moments where you just need to question why didn't they finish the CGI? And that's really all I can take away from this movie. Great visual effects, forgettable story, should have been left like that, but nope, there are now 4 sequels that are coming out. One of them is already in theaters as the time of this recording, and they will go all the way up to Avatar 5. Great. Just some more movies with some forgettable characters and basically just visual effects to keep the audiences entertained. 4 out of 10. Honestly, I think this movie would have just been better off as a one-off film and not launching a franchise. Okay, with all that being said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And as always, if you have any ideas for anything for me to talk about, please leave them in the comments below on the YouTube video. But as of right now, my name is Sean Arguello, saying goodbye for now, but not forever. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.